Hello everyone, welcome to Kane here. Now I think we've got just enough time to squeeze in one more collection update video before summer of this year takes its final bow. We've got mostly CDs to look at in this video, a little bit of vinyl as well. We'll get to first and foremost this CD box set. This is Up All Night with Prince, the One Night Alone collection. And this came out originally in 2002. And sometime after that it became somewhat of a tricky find. It was quite an elusive box set. It's quite pricey as well. And then in 2022, about 20 or so years later, the Prince estate came to our rescue and brought this out. And that's what this is. This is the reissued version. The original version, I did actually see it one time at a record fair. It came in like this elongated sort of long box. And I guess for practicality, they decided to, when they reissued this, to give it this more sort of streamlined release. But I believe in terms of its content, it's more or less the same as the original version. And we'll just go through what's inside. It comes with this booklet, full colour booklet of various photographs of Prince performing live, and that's predominantly and other people performing live. But this is what this box set is mostly made up of, is live material. It's very much an official live release of Prince, from this early 2000s period. And Prince at this time was just, he was just fantastic, really. He was, second to none. And his live performing abilities were just kind of outstanding, really. He was incorporating, of course, a lot of, new material for this time. He was into his jazz, so there was a lot of jazz material. He was doing covers. There's a really good cover of A Whole Lot of Love, Led Zeppelin. And of course, he had decades at this point worth of classic tracks to wow the crowd. Anyway, this is, I believe this image of Prince here was the original version. They went for the original cover rather than this. So yeah, more or less the same image of Prince, just slightly different design. And this is basically a CD set within a CD set. It's two CDs of various live performances from different shows. It's from Oakland, Seattle, Houston, LA, all that kind of stuff, but all put together. And yeah, Prince, like I was saying, just really good at this time live. And this is a really jam-packed couple of CDs. This alone, this aspect, this one part of this box set, it's got so much material on it, and it really is a joy to kind of go through. We'll take a look at this next. This is Prince Live in Las Vegas. This is actually a DVD. And one negative thing about this box set is the fact that it does contain everything that the original box set had. I believe they haven't left anything out, but unfortunately some things could have done with a bit of a tidy up. The audio side of this live show is fine, but the visual side, it could have done with a bit of work, quite honestly. It's kind of formatted in a weird aspect ratio, and it's a bit low res, and that kind of, it could have just done with a bit of cleanup, but it's still a really, really good live Prince show, and it's still, very entertaining, very impressive. This also comes with this live collection, really. This is the One Night Alone, the after show, It Ain't Over. This is taken from various different live shows, after shows the Prince did at this time. I believe at the back here it says New York, LA, and Portland. So yeah, similar to this, really, where it's different live shows put together, compilation, I guess you could call it. And for those who aren't aware, that Prince around this time, I believe earlier as well, and after this, he would do after shows after his of course after his main show. He'd go to a city and play a big arena, and then he'd typically book a small venue to perform at afterwards. The only thing is, and this is one thing that he got into somewhat hot water about, is that sometimes he would show up to these live shows, sometimes he just wouldn't, for whatever reason. And yeah, he'd get criticised for that. And for the uninitiated at the time, the non-Prince fans, the people who maybe weren't aware that this was the case. He just wouldn't show up. You know, the true fans, they knew at this time what he was kind of like and whether he'd show up or not. Prince would actually leave messages online on his website. He'd leave like cryptic messages, and people would read into that whether or not he'd show up. And they'd buy a ticket because he left some sort of weird message, and think, oh, that must mean he's going to show tonight. I want to buy a ticket to his after show. So yeah, sometimes it would be Prince, sometimes it'd just be his band performing, and Prince wouldn't show. But apparently, the after shows generally were considered in many cases better than the actual main shows because it was a different atmosphere. It was a smaller venue, you're closer to the stage, closer to Prince. So yeah, they did have their upsides when Prince did show up. But quite honestly, this whole thing of him showing up and not showing up, he was such a great performer at this time. He was absolutely amazing. You can kind of get away with that kind of crap. Quite honestly, if it was any lesser artist, you'd think he just wouldn't get away with it. But Prince, because he was just so amazing, particularly at this time, he was on really fine form. Kind of get away with jerking his fans around. So anyway, we'll take a look at this as the last disc we're going to be looking at for this box set, and it's the only studio material really in this box set. It's One Night Alone, solo piano and voice by Prince. It's predominantly just that, his voice and the piano work. There's other bits and pieces here and there, but it's largely a stripped down production. And this, quite honestly, is not a great Prince album. It's not terrible or anything like that. I don't think Prince was capable of putting out a terrible album, but it's just a little bit unremarkable. Quite honestly, it's not his strongest material, and there's very little places to hide in this because the production is so sort of stripped back. So it's not great, but it's worth a look if you're into you're into collecting prints, and it's nice that we can kind of finally get our hands on this because this was quite a tricky album to get your hands on before this reissue was out. But at the same time, it's not a release that is really all that great. And if it wasn't for really all the extra live material that this box set includes, this on its own is kind of a bit of a dud. Quite honestly, it's a bit of a maybe I need to give it more time, but it's definitely not one of Prince's finest studio albums. So we'll move on to the Rolling Stones. Now this is Some Girls. This is the special edition deluxe version. Not sure what exactly this version is known as, but it's from recent years. I'm not sure if this is still in production or whatever, but this actually was recommended to me by somebody in the comments. I think it was the comments from the Rolling Stones ranking video, that the studio album ranking video that I made. Finally got my hands on it. I got it on eBay. It was about £10 or so, and I think it was marked as used, but it's pretty much in mint condition. Quite honestly, it's a really nice shape, and I bought this almost essentially really for the bonus disc that this has. And typically with bonus discs, I'm not really that interested in them. Usually they just contain a few extra whatever, and it's something that you largely listen to once and never go back to. But the bonus disc on this is actually really, really good. It's effectively, the booklet's nothing really that great. I'll just show this as I've got it out. But the bonus disc for this is perhaps one of the best bonus discs of all time, or at least I'm aware of, because the Stones at this time, when they recorded Some Girls, they had recorded quite a lot of material, it seems, and they basically had another album. Some Girls could have been a double. They could have put it out as a double album with all the material that they had, but they didn't. They sort of shelved a lot of material, like 40 odd minutes or so. So it was like a studio album length long amount of material. It's not like just like a couple of tracks here and there. They actually had a lot of material. So yeah, this was, I believe, the first time it ever got officially released. And yeah, the Stones were in really good form at this time. So yeah, to have effectively another album from this period is a real treat. And I hadn't heard, I wasn't aware of this release up until somebody mentioned it, and it was nice to kind of check this out. This is really, really good bonus material. One of the best bonus discs I've kind of got really. and it's a good mix of country. There's some country in there. There's some hard rock, some covers in there. So yeah, really really nice things. I'd highly recommend. You don't necessarily have to buy this box set. I think it is on Spotify, but really nice, and other online streamers. But it's well worth checking out. Some good, really good material on it, and really happy to get my hands on it. So we'll move on. It's maybe not as arguably as good as Some Girls, although there is some actual songs in there that I'm surprised they left out, and there's some songs that I think are maybe in terms maybe go beyond deep cut, in terms of deep cut classics, they kind of go beyond that because they've never effectively been released up until now or officially been put on a studio album. So anyway, we'll move her on to from the Rolling Stones onto the Kinks, and this is effectively a two-album set. It's the Muswell Hillbillies and Everybody's in Show Business, and I thought this was a great way of getting hold of these two albums. Because I'm trying to get my way through all the Kinks releases, and I really do like these book sort of reissues that they're doing. I've got the Lola album, and uh, I've got the Arthur album. I've got a few of these now, and I do really quite like them. So went ahead that they were doing a double album release. These two quite highly regarded Kinks albums. I thought I'd get my hands on the albums are there. One's missing because it's in my CD player, and yet I really love Muswell Hillbillies. It may well be my favourite Kinks album. May even become one of my favourite just albums, just generally. Really, really good album. And this got some bonus tracks as well. Just nothing outstanding, nothing great like the Stones album I've just shown. Just some different mixes really of both albums. It's got like a 2022 mix of some of the songs. So nothing really remarkable, quite honestly. It's not a must-have. Release this if you've already got these albums. I'd say there was like a super deluxe versions. Maybe they're something more for the something more interesting in terms of the material on here. This is really just for the albums. And yeah, Muswell Hillbillies, really great album. Everybody's in Showbiz is a pretty good album, as well. I think there's some good stuff on it. It's an interesting album as well. The fact that it's a studio album and it's a live album as well, which is it's kind of weird though because you get the album and then you move over to the studio album. You get through the studio album, you get to the live one, and it's got like a lot of material on it from the previous release. It's got Muswell Hillbillies songs in it, so you're kind of getting different versions of the previous albums songs really, and it's kind of a bit weird really, quite honestly. But it's still a much better album than Sometime in New York City by John and Yoko. That sort of monstrosity of an album, released around the same sort of time, I believe, 1972. So yeah, pretty nice release, and it's a good way of getting your hands on quite a lot of Kinks material in quite a very small package. And paid about £10 for this, and it's just like a nice little combination, particularly as I like Muswell Hillbillies so much. So a very nice pickup, really. So we'll move on now to a local hero of mine. This is Miles Kane, and this is One Man Band. His latest album, and it came out this year. And I've actually got a few copies. Of this. He's doing this thing where it's just typical of a lot of musicians these days. If you want to buy a ticket to a show, you've got to buy a copy of his album. It's a way of boosting sales of their album, and they actually work because this. I actually got two copies of this. It got to number 5 in the charts. I gave the other copy away to somebody. This was signed as well. He did this other thing where if you buy this, which is a live version of this, really, it's got a lot of live material from this and some different versions, I guess, studio versions. So yeah, it's a good album. It really is. It's maybe not up there with my favorite. I really do like the previous album, Change the Show, which was released last year. So he was bringing them up thick and fast. This has got some really good stuff on it. And there's one song on here I was listening to earlier today, which I think is really good, is Ransom. So yeah, he's really good local rock star, I suppose. Still hanging out with the Arctic Monkeys guys. I believe he's touring Ireland with them, and we got our way to a Shadow Puppets reunion. Well, I kind of my main focus. I'm probably one of the few people who's into Miles Kane, and maybe not so much into Alex Turner. I'm a Miles Kane guy. He's more of my cup of tea. Anyway, this is really nice, really nice. I went to one of his signings as well. Got loads of things signed. So yeah, check that out if you can. One man band album. We'll move on to some vinyl now. These are upgrade copies. I got their Satanic Majesty's Request. Again, another Stones album. And yeah, this is an album I've been meaning to get an upgrade copy for some time now. But the thing is with this album is that it really is a pain in the neck to get your hands on a nice copy. It's not one of the Stones' best albums from the '60s, kind of far from it. But in terms of getting a nice original copy of this, it's pricey. I guess because of the gimmicky aspect of it, the cover and everything. But this is the new copy that I've got. It's in terms of the cover, it's lovely. Nice cover. It is a stereo one, and if you are going to get a copy of this album, an original copy in the UK anyway, I would avoid getting your hands on the mono ones, and which is something that I'm a mono guy. I love mono from the '60s. The '60s versions of the Beatles and the Stones and all that. I generally prefer going for the monos, but when it comes to this album, go for the stereo because Decca decided in their infinite wisdom back in the '60s they brought out this was the last proper mono stereo release, and the original first press mono was true mono, and then they reissued it, and it was a fold down, I believe, of the stereo, which is what I've got, my other copy that I've got, and it doesn't really sound that great, to be honest with you. It sounds a bit muddy. Not that it's terrible or anything like that. This isn't a particularly brilliantly recorded album, quite honestly, but it's not great. I'd rather have proper stereo given the choice between the two. It does come with fairly nice, uh, full-like inner, the Sergeant Pepper type inner. And I was reading comments of this is on a forum somewhere, just out of sheer boredom really, of this album, and someone was saying that it's a completely ridiculous statement to make that the their Satanic Majesty's Request is anything like Sergeant Pepper, and then you got the inner sleeve, which is almost exactly the same as it's sort of like such a ridiculous thing to say because the two are kind of similar. They've got similarities, not the same album, of course, but to say that they've got nothing in common whatsoever is kind of a ridiculous. You've got the Beatles' faces in the cover of the artwork, in the hologram somewhere. But anyway, this is the record, green label, stereo, nice copy, very nice, not mint or anything, but a lot better than the other copy that I had. I think the first copy I had of this album, it didn't even play all the way through. It had like a big gouge in it, and it gets so far into it that it just stopped. So yeah, definitely my final upgrade copy. And this was fairly pricey. It wasn't a cheap, unfortunately, it wasn't a cheapo copy. I think I paid just under 50 for it, which is perilous for an album I don't really like that much. Is kind of a bit ridiculous. But this is the other copy that I've got, the mono one. And the cover's fine, really. Just a bit wonky, I suppose. I don't know what's happened to it. I think maybe the lamination shrunk her a bit. It's kind of a bit ski-whiff, a bit like me. That's the cover. And it does come with the inner sleeve as well, but it's a bit more tatty than the other one. And the record for the original other copy that I've got, the mono blue label. And this is one of the fake the fold down stereo into mono, and yet I believe they didn't even do that in America. The American reissues of the mono were fine. It's just they did it here for some reason, and it's not great, quite honestly. But like I said, it's not a particularly great recording. It's not the main reason why I got this upgrade copy, by the way, because it's the condition. The condition's just not very good, and it's one thing I wanted to get an upgrade for, but never could really up until now because prices for their Satanic Majesty's Request have always been on the upper end of things, particularly the nicer ones. So we'll wrap things up with one more record. This is Tyrannosaurus Rex, A Beard of Stars, and this is again an upgrade copy. And yeah, fairly nice, definitely an upgrade of the last one. Again, not a minty one. I do have my other copy here, which I'm not necessarily going to go through, but yeah, it's a nicer copy overall. And it comes with the lyric in this in a sorry, in a sleeve. It's an insert, should I say, and the label. So Regal Zonophone stereo. It was only released recorded in stereo, and yeah, much nicer copy. The other copy I've got isn't actually all that bad. It was one of them, you know, when you've got a copy of something, you kind of into your minds about upgrading it. It played through, it was fine. It just sounded like it'd been played a lot of times, you know. I think whoever had it originally, maybe it'd been through a lot of record shops, you know, people used to buy records and then trade them, and then maybe it'd been in and out of record shops over the decades or whatever. But this is a nicer copy. Not in great shape or anything, not mint. A few pops and clicks here and there, but hasn't been played anywhere near as much as my original copy. So I managed to get two, well, not 60s albums because Beard of Stars is from 1970, but nearly the 60s. Yeah, so pretty old records, nicer copies, upgrade copies, finally. And I think I nearly paid £60 for an upgrade of A Beard of Stars at a record fair, and I kind of did, you know, I didn't. So I'm kind of glad because I think I paid just shy of 40, I think, for this reissue, this upgrade copy that I've got, and yeah, I think that was a better deal than I think the other one in the record fair was probably a better copy, but it was more expensive. So you know, it is what it is. So anyway, I think that'll do for this video. Thanks for watching, everyone. And yeah, I've got a few ideas for videos, like I always do, and I never get around to making them. I'm going to try and dedicate a bit of time to making some videos. Hopefully, this isn't the last one for a while. Yeah, I'm going to try and get another one made soon, maybe later on this week. You know, kind of maybe get back in after the summer's finished. I'm a summer guy. I like to enjoy the summertime. I don't really like to, you know, be away from it if I can. Even work wise, I'm kind of like, you know, gritting my teeth when the weather's nice and I have to, you know, crawl into work. But now that the summer's more or less gone, unfortunately, which is a shame, I'll kind of maybe dedicate a bit more time to videos. So anyway, once again, thanks for watching, everyone, and goodbye.